am. I hope all is well in your corner of the world. Man, really excited to get into this one. Someone in the comment section said, "Yo, you got to check out Rogue Wave by Aesop Rock." So I'm like, "Yo, let's check it out. Let's add something new to our folder." For those of you that might be new to the channel, I encourage you to like the video, but also subscribe to the channel. Aesop Rock is an artist that we've been highlighting. We went through the Garbology album. We went through some of his older work, Pizza Alley. What was it? Kirby. Was it Mystery Fish? So we've done quite a few. There's a folder that has several different, really in-depth breakdowns of his music. And really, he's one of those artists that I'm learning more and more about as we continue to break down his work. Some artists like Black Thought or Logic or J. Cole, they might use different types of references, right? Different types of wordplay. And I think I'm starting to understand that Aesop Rock, he's painting a very beautiful picture. He does leave a lot for interpretation, but I think we do a pretty good job of getting the overall view of what he's trying to write and understanding the context in which he writes. Definitely a superb lyricist, but also really excellent writing as well. So without further ado, let's get right into Rogue Wave. And I pulled up a lyric video. Hopefully it's not trash. We've had a few that just really make it difficult to do a breakdown. But let's check it out. Aesop Rock presents Rogue Wave, coming soon. The beat's on.
Yeah, a little bread, a little circus. It serves as a diversion for devils and death merchants. I was curled up underneath the swirling thread of reds and purples. Lumberjack flannel, strapping saddles over servals.
Right,
little bread, a little circus. It serves as a diversion for devils and death merchants. I was curled up underneath the swirling thread of reds and purples.
Okay, like Authority.
Pedaling in circles with 10,000 maniacs and
Okay, so I'm already getting some vibes here that he's talking about back in the day. It sounds more ancient, right? He said a little bread, a little circus. Here, let's can't even see myself when I talk, right? A little bread, a little circus. That's the phrase originates from Rome, right? It's about an old poem. That really the gist of it is you're using food to appease the masses, right? Roman emperors, they made sure to give what they call the bread and the circus, right? Food and entertainment to keep people busy and happy. We kind of still do this to this day, but a lot of the festivals, rich and poor, they would go to, like the gladiator games, right? Chariot races. Are you not entertained? Right? Thing Gladiator. They would do these really big games in like coliseums. There is more of a political context, though. It's like to get public approval, what do? If you're running for class president, you say that we're always going to have pizza and Hawaiian punch in the water fountain, right? It's going after love, but not necessarily with service or like public policy. But it's more or less a distraction, right? It's giving somebody something they really want, dangling it in front of them because that's going to earn their business, if you would. So that's where he's going with that. That originates from Rome. But you think about what he's saying, right? He said it serves as a diversion for devils and death merchants. So it definitely sounds like somebody who's peddling merchandise, right? Somebody who's begging in the streets, and how he views possibly these merchants, right, as possibly devils. But let's run it back, because he says, I was curled up underneath a swirling thread of reds and purples. Now, at first glance, that looks to me like he's talking about the authority figures, and it would really tie in well with ancient Rome. But let's just run it back a bit. Run it back.
Yeah, A little bread, a little circus. It served as a diversion for devils and death merchants. I was curled up underneath the swirling thread of reds and purples.
Yeah. So in Roman mythology, red is associated with blood, right? Of courage, right? It was the color of the god of war, right? The color of their army. Roman soldiers typically wore red tunics, and a lot of gladiators wore red. Now, purple is a little bit different. Purple is really not associated with the soldiers, but purple is more associated with royalty, right? It's a very regal color, but there's a lot that goes into it. But in ancient times, the actual dye, the purple dye that they use, it was rare and it was really expensive. So yeah, it's a beautiful color, but it also think about the process. It's not something that a poor person would wear. So when he says I was curled up underneath a swirling thread of reds and purples, it sounds like people are on the hunt for him, right? Maybe he's in a place he shouldn't be, or he's somewhere waiting to escape. But it definitely sounds like people are onto him.
Yeah. A little bread, a little circus. It served as a diversion for devils and death merchants. I was curled up underneath the swirling thread of reds and purples. Lumberjack flannel, strapping saddles over servals, pedaling in circles with 10,000.
Okay, so he's saying that he's really differentiating himself from the royal people and the security personnel, right? He said a lumberjack flannel, and you think about what that means in today's world. You're really saying you're kind of like an everyday Joe, if you would. He says strapping saddles over servals. Now, you could definitely tell he's a worker bee, right? He's not the main bee. But you think about that. He's strapping saddles over servals. Now, servals are wild animals. They're the cats that you would see. Now, I'm not too good with animal references, but I know cats obviously meant a lot in Rome and Egypt. But I believe servals are technically from Africa. Well, yeah, they are native to, yeah. Okay, so that would make sense in this, but let's do it.
For devils and death merchants, I was curled up underneath the swirling thread of reds and purples. Lumberjack flannel, strapping saddles over servals, pedaling in circles with 10,000 maniacs in Yankee caps who get to know the neighbors every time they tip the ladle back.
Ooh, run it back.
For devils and death merchants, I was curled up underneath the swirling thread of reds and purples. Lumberjack flannel, strapping saddles over servals, pedaling in circles with 10,000 maniacs in Yankee caps who get to know the neighbors.
So yeah, it sounds like he's definitely talking about ancient Rome, because it also sounds like he's going back to peddling. And we were just talking about the kind of image that we had of people around the Colosseum, right, selling and trading goods, right? These poor people. It definitely sounds like he is possibly one of them, or he's definitely not royalty, and he's definitely not part of the security team. But it sounds like he might be a thief or one of these. What does he say? Serves as a diversion for devils and death merchants. But I think it's really important to think about ancient Egypt, ancient Rome. When he talks about servals, and you think of a really exotic cat, not quite a hyena. You see those things today, and the boys in Africa got chains, and they got a hyena as a pet. This isn't quite there, but a serval is like I think you could domesticate them, but they're relatively wild. But ancient Egyptians, they worshiped the cat, right? They had a goddess that was specifically the goddess of cats. She guarded people against illness, evil, right? It's normally, when you think of you in Egypt, you have is it the Anub? No, it's the goddess. She has a cat head. But, keep in mind at this time, cats were, it was illegal to harm a cat. You couldn't even take cats outside of Egypt. But there were in ancient Rome, and I believe this is kind of where I get the idea that this is where we're coming from. They had a lot of other use because they scared away rats, right? Typical to how we do now. And you think about the Roman army, and you think about food supply and the weapons that they're using. So cats would have been not just not just someone to be a mascot or a companion, but there was an everyday use. The cats were very valuable in their world. So he's saying he's strapping a saddle over a serval. Servals are relatively small for that, but it kind of gives you the impression that he's a worker bee, and it definitely solidifies from everything that I've seen so far. I've heard thus far, it sounds like he's talking about ancient Rome.
Since I was curled up underneath the swirling thread of reds and purples, lumberjack flannel strapping saddles over servals, pedaling in circles with 10,000 maniacs in Yankee caps who get to know the since I was curled up underneath the swirling thread of reds and purples, lumberjack flannel strapping saddles over servals, pedaling in circles with 10,000 maniacs.
See, I hate these lyric videos that say it says paddling as if he's in the water, but I think he's saying pedaling. Right, pedaling in circles with 10,000 maniacs in Yankee caps. So now he's the wordplay, right? It's kind of like we were just discussing peddlers, like pedaling in the street, like the poor would be doing in ancient Rome, right? You think again about the movie Gladiator and what it looked like outside of those coliseums, right? But I like how he's still playing off again devil and death merchants. But now it sounds like he's comparing this to being in New York, right? We can tell because he says the Yankee caps. Pedaling, it sounds like, so it sounds like he might be on a bike, right? They're pedaling in circles. Why? Is it because he's riding a bike and he's simply pedaling the bike? Or is it because they're going around in circles like... he isn't going anywhere. I guess we'll have to wait and find out. But it definitely sounds like I know he's a skateboarder, but I believe I've heard that he does ride bikes as well. That was in another one of the songs that we broke down, so that's what I would guess. Pedaling, but also the wordplay on like peddlers.
A diversion for devils and death merchants. I was curled up underneath the swirling thread of reds and purples. Lumberjack flannel strapping saddles over servals, pedaling in circles with 10,000 maniacs in Yankee caps who get to know the neighbors every time they tip the ladle. Ragtag in Yankee caps who get to know the neighbors every time they tip the ladle back. Ragtag cat.
Okay, so most of you know what a ladle is, right? I'm not talking about like metal, like a hot molten lava and there's a ladle and you're dumping. I think he's talking about like a soup ladle, right? That would make sense, like somebody in a cafeteria would, if you're serving like soup or something that's like very liquidy. Actually, now that I think about it, listen to how he's saying it, right? Because he said they get to know the neighbors every time they tip the ladle back. So what happens when you pour the ladle back? You're pouring something, right? Pour. And it definitely sounds like there's some wordplay here. Because you get to know your neighbors when you eat with them, right? You break bread with them and you drink with them. But when you pull the ladle back, you're pouring. It's what you call a homophone, right? There's pour, meaning like deprived. And then pour, like he's pouring oatmeal out of the ladle. And it definitely sounds like he's discussing the poor, right? A little bread, a little circus. He's talking about these death merchants, right? There's a lot going on here. Somebody's hiding. I'm thinking like Aladdin, stealing the apple and running from the royalty and the security. He's a lumberjack. So he's like your everyday Joe. He's strapping saddles over servals. So he's like a worker bee. And now we got him pedaling in circles, so like he's riding the streets in New York. And he's saying that, so he's talking about poor. It actually looks like he goes into ragtag, which would play on that. But let's let it ride.
Cats who get to know the neighbors every time they tip the ladle back. Ragtag cats and canines who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time.
Ooh!
Canines who catch every time they tip the ladle back. Ragtag cats and canines who catch.
Ragtag is like ratty, right? It's like not well put together. Like you don't look desirable. But again, it sounds like he's playing on the less fortunate, which would also make sense because you tip the ladle back and it means poor, right? So it definitely sounds like he's talking about the less fortunate
Every
here.
time they tip the ladle back. Ragtag cats and canines who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time. Work no.
Now, I think he's not talking about, I think he's tying in cats and canines, right? Ragtag cats and canines. But I don't think he's talking about the actual animal. I think he's talking about how, like, we would say, like, you're right, we know he's in New York right now. I think he's talking about people, right? Cool cats and, like, maybe his dogs or his boys. But he's playing off the poor. So maybe these are his friends and they're all, like, the less fortunate ragtag cats and canines. Sounds like they're his group of friends chilling in, like, the New York City alleys or something. Because, listen to what he said after that, right? He said, who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time. It sounds like they're taggers. That's a tagging reference. It's like repping where you're from, right? But where is the fabric of space and time? I would imagine he's talking about a train, right? You think about that reference. Let's just let it ride a little bit.
Caps who get to know the neighbors every time they tip the ladle back. Ragtag cats and canines who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time. All work, no play. Dull boys rotate. Olds on the ladle back. Ragtag cats and canines who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time. All work, no play. Get to know the neighbors every time they tip the ladle back. Ragtag cats and canines who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time.
Yeah, it makes me think. One of my favorite books is this book called. It's about Chicago. It's actually kind of like a history book, I guess. It's called The City of Big Shoulders. It plays off a poem by Carl Sandburg. He wrote in the early 1900s, where he refers to the city of Big Shoulders. I'm from Chicago, but the reference is like the hardworking tradesmen, the laborers that really made the city the industrial center that it is, right? But they discuss the evolution of Chicago, the Native American tribes that were in Chicago, but it also talks about the evolution of the railway system. And, we start talking about, how did the railways affect time and space? Well, the railroad, and in this book, City of Big Shoulders, they say that the railroad changed human perception of time and space. Right? You can travel, you can make long distance travel much faster, much easier. So I think what he's referring to here is the reference could be they're tagging up the trains in New York, right? He's with his little ratty-tatty friends, the poor, the less fortunate, the ones that run from cops and the law and royalty. But these are the lumberjack flannel friends. And it sounds like they're tagging up some subways.
Cats and canines who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time. All work, no play. Dull boys rotate. Old boy, ghost face, Tolstoy, Coltrane.
Ooh.
Dull boys rotate. Tags on the fabric of space-time. All work, no play. Dull boys rotate.
He said all work, no play, right? He said all catch fat. Yeah, all work, no play. Dull boys rotate. I think rotate. He's also playing off pedaling, right? When you're pedaling, you're rotating. So he's still playing off that, but also pedaling from the poor, right? Pedaling through New York with 10,000 maniacs as he throws up some tags on trains, right? So I don't know if he's also. All work, no play. Dull boys rotate. Dull boys rotate. Let me listen to it again.
They tip the ladle back. Ragtag cats and canines who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time. All work, no play. Dull boys rotate. Old boy, ghost face.
It's interesting because if you guys know anything about graffiti, right? There's different types of graffiti. You get people that do stickers, some that throw up different graffiti, some that draw just in there. It's like what I used to do. I'm not a tagger or anything myself, but you'll know that if you ever tagged, or you're tagging in your notebook, you're not really just sitting there drawing like you would a normal picture, right? You have to flip and you have to rotate the picture normally to get your lines right, to get the color right, to get the shadowing. So, this could be a stretch, but I could see it playing together. All work, no play has a lot of meaning in itself. But dull boys rotate. It also sounds like he could be saying that this is for the ones that are dull. You're going to be rotating because you're only drawing in sketchbooks. You're not going out there and actually throwing something up and tagging on trains or jumping on a bridge. So that's a very dull way of handling graffiti. It could be a reach there, but I wonder if he's referencing that. All work and no play. That the entire saying is all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? This is basically saying that without any time off from work, that somebody becomes bored, right, or boring. This story became really popular with Jack Nicholson in The Shining, right, or The Shitting if you watch The Simpsons. But all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So by him saying, what is it? All work, no play, dull boys rotate. It sounds like he might be bringing out something that if they are tagging on these trains, if you're the lamest of the taggers, you're not actually going out and doing anything. I don't know. I'd like to hear your interpretation of that. But let's let it ride here a bit because it sounded like he was about to get into something really interesting here.
It's time, all work, no play. Dull boys rotate. Old boy, ghost face, Tolstoy, cold train grows up. Rotate.
I think he said old boy, ghost face. I didn't catch the second part. I think he said, hold on. What's that?
Tags on the fabric of space time, all work, no play. Dull boys rotate. Old boy, ghost face, Tolstoy, cold train grows up.
It sounds like he's talking old boy, ghost face, Tolstoy, Coltrane. They're very different things, right? Old boy. The only thing I can think of outside of it wouldn't be ODB. There's a movie, Old Boy, Ghostface Killer. Tolstoy, that's the guy that wrote War and Peace, right? The Russian dude. And Coltrane, obviously, John Coltrane. One thing I can think of is these are people that are top of, I guess, the Old Boy too, right? Because Old Boy, was it Japanese or Korean? But all of these would be considered the top of one of the top in their, Let's listen to it again. I want to see if there's any inflection in his voice or if he means anything different here. Let's run it back a little bit.
Back. Ragtag cats and canines who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time. All work, no play. Dull boys rotate. Old boy, ghost face, Tolstoy, cold train grows up off the nails off the rails.
It sounds... I would definitely think he's referencing Old Boy. Old Boy is always mentioned when you talk about, I want to say it's Korean and not Japanese, but one of the best Korean movies ever made, right? They have that saying, it's like, be it a rock or grain of salt, if you put them in water, they sink the same way. Right, so in the movie, saying that the guilt is the same as another. It's basically like don't throw rocks when your house is made of glass. I actually didn't finish the movie. I'm not even gonna lie. I think it's a book too, but there were a lot of references in Old Boy to Greek mythology, and I don't know if that ties with this, but there were a lot of like the guy in Old Boy. His name is very similar to who is it? Is it Oedipus? In Greek mythology, the guy cuts out his eyes, and in the movie, the guy cuts out his tongue, and his name is very similar. So, but anyway, the movie is supposed to be one of the greatest of all times. But you look at Ghostface, right? Ghostface Killer. He's from New York as well, which I guess a lot of people are, especially in music and art. But that could be another tie-in. But Ghostface Killer is one of the best or most lyrical rappers, and someone from Wu Tang. One of the best groups ever put together, hip hop groups. Tolstoy, it's funny, these people are all from different parts of the world, right? Tolstoy is Russian, right? Old Boy is Korean. Ghostface is American. I believe Coltrane's American too. Tolstoy, again, most people know him from War and Peace, or at least that's where I know him from. But he's considered, I know War and Peace is considered one of the best pieces of writing ever. But I believe he's one of the best writers of all time. And Coltrane, of course, being one of the best jazz players ever. So it definitely sounds like there's different dimensions of what he's doing. But there could be something different there. But we'll let it ride and just see if there's any other wordplay that kind of pulls these in.
Ghostface, Tolstoy, Coltrane grows up off the nails off the rails. Born bathed in a tornado with claws and tails. Got skulls and names who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time. All work, no play. Dull boys rotate. Old boy, Ghostface, Tolstoy, Coltrane grows up off the nails off the rails. Old boy, Ghostface, Tolstoy, time. All work, no play. Dull boys neighbors every time they tip the ladle back. Ragtag cats and canines who catch fat tags on the fabric of space-time. All work, no play. Dull boys rotate. Old boy, Ghostface, Tolstoy, Coltrane grows up.
So he could be referring to this line, right? You talk about the fabric of space-time, and we're talking about pedaling or different cycles, like the bicycle, right? And what he's doing. These guys all exist at different times in different places, right? So that there could be something there about the cycle of people that are the best in the industry, but it also ties into all all work and no play, because these men are at the top of their game. But I could definitely see this being like a metaphor, or at least a metaphor being used to describe these artists that kind of come and go, and movies that come and go. So that's definitely something to think of. I'll put it on the back burner as we see how it ties into other lyrics here.
Dull boys rotate. Old boy, Ghostface, Tolstoy, Coltrane grows up off the nails off the rails.
Ooh.
Bathed in a tornado with claws and tails.
What he says right there, throws up coffin nails off the rails. It reinforces what I thought earlier. He's tagging up trains in New York, right? When you're doing graffiti, for somebody who's done graffiti before, they normally refer to it as throwing something up, right? Not literally throwing up, but throwing up a piece of art, throwing up a tag or graffiti, right? Off the rails tells me that this might be about a train, and he's tagging up the train.
Dull boys rotate. Old boy, Ghostface, Tolstoy, Coltrane grows up off the nails off the rails. Born bathed.
There's some wordplay there too, right? Throwing up as well as coffin, not just like in a coffin, like nails in a coffin, but coughing, like you're dying because you're throwing up and you're coughing, and then coffin nails, right? Something that finally destroys you. There's a lot of good wordplay there. Excellent writing.
Tolstoy, Coltrane grows up off the nails off the rails. Born bathed.
Man, I wish I could kind of speed up his lyrics so I could see if it connects to anything else. I find myself kind of waiting for his lyrics here.
Tolstoy, Coltrane grows up off the nails off the rails. Born bathed in a tornado with claws and tails. Got skulls on his sail.
It sounds like he's talking about, at least the way I interpret it, is that he's being raised, or he's being born into this really harsh environment, which would play on the less fortunate and poor that it seems like he's referencing in the earlier sentences, right? He said, born bathed in a tornado of claws and tails, right? If you're bathing in it, it's all around you, right? It's circling you. Claws and tails, it sounds like he's still playing off cats and dogs as well. But this sounds like it's a bit more sinister, right? It sounds like the people have claws, right? Or tails, kind of like demons, that there's bad people all around him, which would make sense that he's saying he's in New York, he's in the subway, he's throwing up some tags, he's running from authorities, right? So it definitely sounds like he's on the other side of the law, if you would.
Take old boy, ghost face, Tolstoy, Coltrane, grows up off the nails off the rails, born bathed in a tornado with claws and tails, got skulls on his sails, cobras on the pleather, salt and pepper soldiers.
A rebel, a pirate, right? It sounds like he's on a pirate theme where he said, I got skulls on the sails, right? Cobras on the pleather, that could be a little bit different. But you think of skulls on sails, it kind of ties into being born into this bad environment. It kind of ties into throwing up and coughing, right? And nails in the coffin, kind of signifying death, right? The skulls on the sails. The original pirate flags, just a little, they were actually blood red. They weren't black and white. But it was meant to signify that there's no mercy, that once the pirates boarded and there was any form of a battle, it represented there was a death, right? So this would also tie into the nail in the coffin, the throwing up, and the coughing, signifying death. That's excellent wordplay. I don't know if a lot of cats are catching that either.
Rose up off the nails off the rails, born bathed in a tornado with claws and tails, got skulls on his sails, cobras on the pleather, salt and pepper soldiers barely holding it together. But supposedly
salt and pepper, like this, right? When you talk about they're older, they got experience, but they're showing signs of age, right? Salt and pepper is normally to describe someone's hair. Once they begin to get old and get gray or white, you look at my salt and pepper beard. A funny thing is I'm only 40 years old. When I was 30 years old, I had a mostly white beard. I just skipped the gray part and just went right into white. I think my life expectancy is like 50 probably. So you got another 10 years. Come on now with it. Look at the bright side, right? But yeah, definitely sounds like he's talking about salt and pepper soldiers barely holding it together. Right. So it sounds like they're they got experience, but these are older cats.
cobras on the pleather, salt and pepper soldiers barely holding it together, but supposedly awoken down and mobilized whenever.
Supposedly? I think it's funny he says supposedly awoke, right? Or down to mobilize whenever. Like they really think they are, but they might not be, right?
Claws and tails, got skulls on his sails, cobras on the pleather, salt and pepper soldiers barely holding it together, but supposedly awoken down and mobilized whenever. You're pretty much a Gomer Pyle to pester. Remember,
Gomer Pyle is he's from the Andy Griffith Show. I don't know if a lot of young cats would remember that. That's that. Look at my dog in the back. His name is Bane. He's like, who's a good boy? Bane a good boy. But he's referring to Gomer Pyle. He was like this very simple man, and I mean simple when it comes to intellect. He was naive and gentle, but he often got in the way with very complex matters, and he was annoying, and he got in the way of things, but he was still a lovable dude. That's definitely who he's referring to here.
Salt and pepper soldiers barely holding it together, but supposedly awoken down and mobilized whenever. You're pretty much a Gomer Pyle to pester. Remember, I'm problematic trouble. I will commandeer the goulash under
He said I'm Pop-O-Matic trouble when I commandeer the goulash, right? Pop-O-Matic trouble, most people just refer to it as trouble. It's an old board game. The middle part actually pops the dice up in this little bubble, so you can't just throw the dice and roll it on the thing. You just pop the middle of it and it automatically rolls the dice.
Awoken down and mobilized whenever. You're pretty much a Gomer Pyle to pester. Remember, I'm problematic trouble, I will commandeer the goulash under hockey here.
Commandeer, that's like taking possession of something. They do it a lot for military purposes, but I guess this would really tie in with the whole pirate theme as well, when they're taking over someone's ship, let's say.
Pester, remember, I'm problematic trouble, I will commandeer the goulash under hockey here.
Goulash. I guess goulash could tie in too, right? Goulash is like soup or stew. I believe it's European. Don't quote me on that. But this could also be tying into the use of the ladle, right? And you tip it back to pour, also referencing the pour. Pour what? The goulash, right? Ooh, the blue ox. The blue ox is a reference to Paul Bunyan. Who remembers Paul Bunyan? He's the big lumberjack, which would also tie into the lumberjack reference earlier, right? The whole wildlife theme. But Paul Bunyan and the blue ox, they're actually statues that are in Minnesota, right? What is the blue ox's name? It'll come to me, but the blue ox is the companion to Paul Bunyan, right? They're heroes, but I don't really know the blue ox. Like, he was blue. I believe his name might be Babe, but I could be confusing it with the pig. But I'm pretty sure his name might be Babe the blue ox.
You're pretty much a gomer pal the pester. Remember, I'm problematic trouble, I will commandeer the goulash under hockey here. Zoom off on a blue ox through the blogosphere with puppies.
Yeah, I forgot. He said under hockey hair. Hockey players, they wear their hair long because the helmets start bothering their head. They get itchy, scratchy, so they try to wear their hair long, and that's just another form of a cushion. Now, it could mean a few different things, because pirates are also known for having long hair, not beards. That's really is an urban legend about the beards. They actually try to look like other sailors, and they were really supposedly clean shaven. They would cut themselves with glass or other things to keep themselves clean cut for the ladies, of course. But you do have the exceptions, like Captain Blackbeard, that a lot of people have heard of. So it sounds like they could be connecting the two. Let's just let it ride.
Whenever you're pretty much a gomer pal the pester. Remember, I'm problematic trouble, I will commandeer the goulash under hockey here. Zoom off on a blue ox through the blogosphere with puppies.
And it sounds like he could also be tying in the hair, right? The hockey hair of these pirates. There is a connection with like the older Egyptians, and you think of Rome, and they're the ones that actually created the first barber services. So a lot of times they use like sharpened flint, and then in old Egyptian culture, barbers were really highly respected. So there's a really old, but you could go back to ancient Egypt, right? And you look back and you can see the invention, if you would, or the creation of the barber, which could also tie into this.
Whenever you're pretty much a gomer pal the pester. Remember, I'm problematic trouble, I will commandeer the goulash under hockey here. Zoom off on a blue ox through the blogosphere with
Now, I wonder if he wrote this during COVID, right? Because what happened during COVID? Everybody is stuck in the house. Everyone starts using Zoom a lot more. It eventually translated to Microsoft Teams and Google Meet, but Zoom was overwhelmed, right? And a lot of classrooms and stuff start using Zoom. So it sounds like, he's saying zoom off on a blue ox, right? Is he talking about Babe, the blue ox, but through the blogosphere? So it sounds like, he's referencing keeping his career alive while he's online, and he's in the blogosphere, and like he's doing all his work online.
Commandeer the goulash under hockey here. Zoom off on a blue ox through the blogosphere with puppies for your mama bear. Carrots for the Vitamix. Kibble for the puppies. Something bloody for the fire pit.
Ooh. That beat drop that came in was sick too. He said with puppies for your mama bear. Carrots for the Vitamix. Right? And so he's keeping up with the lumberjack kind of wildlife theme. But he's talking about like bringing something home for your girl. Right? He said, with poppies for your mama bear. your girl would also be, sometimes a lot of people would refer to her as Babe. Babe is the name of the blue ox, Paul Bunyan's blue ox, right? So I think it all ties in together. Poppies, they're also symbolic for remembrance, or a lot of people, the poppy flower, if you would, right? The poppy flower is used to signify a loss in the military. Carrots for the Vitamix. It just sounds like he's making a smoothie of sorts, right? Again, playing with the wildlife, I guess, but maybe he's feeding his blue ox or so. But a Vitamix is a really high-end blender. I believe it has an unusual amount of horsepower.
Kibble for the puppy, something bloody for the fire pit. Never mind the appetizer writhing in a spider web. Stare into it long enough, you with puppies for your mama bear. Carrots for the Vitamix. Kibble for the puppy, something bloody for the fire pit.
So he's bringing back food for the kitties, right? Kibble is for puppies. It's dog food, right? Kibbles and bits. But in reality, he's talking about bringing something bloody back for the fire pit, bringing back some real food.
Carrots for the Vitamix. Kibble for the puppy, something bloody for the fire pit. Never mind the appetizer writhing in a spider
food.
Web. Stare into it long enough, you biters just might find yourselves.
Ooh.
The dark side, Slimer on speed dial.
Slimer.
Street or a leaf pow.
All right, let's not let it go too far, right? He said, he's talking about the app, right? He's talking about food and bringing back food. And he ties it in with the appetizers. You got something appetizing in the spider web. But he said, stare into it long enough, you biters might just find yourself. So think about that. It's still playing off food. It kind of reminds me of the old joke that, they're like, oh, you've been looking at the TV so long. I don't know if you're watching TV or the TV's watching you, right? It's very like look inside yourself, if you would. But he's also linking spiders to biters, right? Just continuing off the web, but biters obviously means something different in hip hop. It's someone who steal parts of your work, right? So he's saying if you look too hard into his work, you might find yourself dying, right? It's like, yo, you're gonna have tea with the dark side. You're gonna meet your maker, or you're gonna have Slimer on speed dial. Slimer is the ghost. It's an old Ghostbusters reference, right? He was originally referred to as Onion Head and the Mean Green Ghost. Ghostbusters, right? But the Ghostbusters are also set in New York City, which also kind of ties this all in together with the Yankees and tagging up on the subway station. So I think it's all playing very well from what we see so far. I like what he says here. It looks like he's talking about sleep on a couch or a street or a leaf pile. Again, just playing. There seems to be an underlying message where he's talking about the poor, people that are the less fortunate, your everyday common Joe. But let's run it back.
Slimer on speed dial. Sleep on a couch or a street or a leaf pile. Our kind cannot be redeemed. I'm a cancer on the glamour. I can't with the me.
Our kind cannot be redeemed. Redeemed, it makes you automatically think about redemption. But it also shows that he's saying our kind. So he's aligning himself with really the outcasts of society, like the homeless and the poor, right? And he it seems like he aligns himself more on that side of the aisle.
Our kind cannot be redeemed. I'm a cancer on the glamour. I can't with the me. No with the signal.
I'm a cancer on the glamour. I can't with the me shit, right? He said everyone's so into themselves, and he isn't with that. But it also seems like he's talking about some form of redemption, right? You think about, and I'm horrible with my religious references, but I believe it's if someone becomes poor and sells himself to you, you can't compel him to serve you as a slave. There's a few different references about being poor in the Bible, but I don't know a specific one that ties it with redemption. But when he talks about cannot be redeemed, there's definitely a biblical part there that we're not referencing right now.
I'm a cancer on the glamour. I can't with the me. No anesthesia surgeon with the signal jammer scrambling the feed. Distributing the panacea free.
Ooh. Man, he's tying this together with it sounds like the all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? Because he's saying, think about that. He said anesthesia, right? No anesthesia surgeon. So I guess you get. Let me listen to it again here.
Distributing the me. No, our kind cannot be redeemed. I'm a cancer on the glamour. I can't with the me. No anesthesia surgeon with the signal jammer scrambling the.
Yeah, no anesthesia. What does anesthesia do? Right, it puts you to sleep. So he's saying he's not a boring artist. Remember, all work and no play make Jack a dull boy, right? So he's saying he's not dull. He's not a boring artist. Scrambling the feed, that's obviously a military term. You're talking about communication, but he's also been talking about food. So it's tying that together. Panacea is like a solution for all, right? He starts talking about, I'm a cancer on the glamour. So he's talking about having like a remedy for this disease. But what is he doing? It sounds like he's giving out his music for free. The music is the cure, right? Listen to what he said there.
Our kind cannot be redeemed. I'm a cancer on the glamour. I can't with the me. No anesthesia surgeon with the signal jammer scrambling the feed. Distributing the panacea free all day. There is no amount of our fathers that could remedy the black dog breathing down his collar.
Yeah, so think about that, right? There's no amount of our fathers. He's talking about Father's prayer, right? He's tying this with the previous line about being redeemed and redemption, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us for our trespasses, and we forgive those who trespass against us. There's another part to that I don't remember, but way back in the day, my mom used to have us say that at night. But it's called Father's Prayer. So he's saying there's no amount of our fathers. There's no amount of prayer that could remedy the black dog breathing down your collar, right? What's the black dog breathing down your collar? That means there's like doom, right? You're trying to hold the hound dogs back. There's no amount of praying that's going to stop what's going to happen to you.
Our fathers that could remedy the black dog breathing down his collar. Mikasa like a Oscar, hot and popping out of flip blip.
Ooh.
Prince wig, disappearing grid blip.
Ooh, that's so sick. What he said Mikasa, right? It means that they spelled it wrong. It should be M-I. Mi casa in Spanish means my house, like I'm Oscar, right? You're Oscar the Grouch. Hot and popping out a flipped lid. He lives in a garbage can, right? That's a Sesame Street reference. It could also be a garbology reference, right? For those that know, we try to break down the majority. We probably did 80 to 90% of the album. If you go down to the Aesop Rock folder, most of the tracks on Garbology are broken down, and we've done intellectual breakdowns just like this, along with a few of his other songs: Kirby, Mystery Alley, or Pizza Alley, Mystery Fish. So we've gotten into quite a bit of his work now. But this could be a Garbology reference to Oscar the Grouch. He lives in the trash can, right? But I think he's also tying it with a lot of what he's referencing earlier in the track, right? Being poor, servants. He mentioned sleeping on a couch. And of course, most people know Oscar is being homeless. He's not doing too good on Sesame Street, right? Remember the Dave Chappelle skit? He's like, man, I'm tired of this shit. Nobody's helping me, you know?
The black dog breathing down his collar. Mikasa like I'm Oscar, hot and popping out of flip lid. Eye patch, Prince wig, disappearing grid blip.
Yeah, definitely talking about being, it sounds like, he's tying it in with the pirate theme, right? Tying in, you said eye patch, Prince wig. You think about like the old Captain Hook wig, right? And vanishes from the grid. you can interpret that a few different ways, but he could be talking about homelessness, disappearing grid blip, right? Home isn't on the map, which it wouldn't be for Oscar because he lives in a trash can, right? Because nobody's helping him. So I love it.
Lip, lip, eye patch, Prince wig, disappearing grid blip, stiff lip, sure the shit talking Centurion.
Stiff lip. Stiff lip is like somebody who doesn't cry or they don't show any emotion, right? But it would really play. He said shit talk. Shit talk a centurion. That's talking back to authorities, which ties into his previous talk about ancient Rome and its empire, right? You're talking about a centurion. Yeah, I believe this was like the security that he's trying to get away from. If I'm not mistaken, that's what a centurion is. I almost thought it was like half horse, half man. But no, that's, in this sense, I think he's talking about an officer of the law or an officer of the army. And again, they're talking about ancient Rome.
Disappearing grid blip, stiff lip, sure the shit talking Centurion. Tisk tisk, and I'm really wiggle with invertebrates.
Ooh, Oscar the Grouch reference at Sesame Street, right? A lot of people don't remember this, but Oscar the Grouch, he had a little sidekick. Who remembers his little sidekick? It was his little worm named Slimy. And Slimy doesn't speak, tisk tisk, right? But he also wiggles. He's an invertebrate. That's Oscar, who's slimy and grimy, which can also be associated with, unfortunately, the poor, the homeless, right? The servants. So, man, he's tying this in together nicely. I don't know if a lot of people are catching the slimy reference for his worm.
Talking Centurion, tisk tisk, and I'm really wiggle with invertebrates. Perp in a thurible.
Ooh, perp in a thurible, right? What's a thurible? If you go to church, Catholic church, you might walk around there, and there's incense coming out, right? It's swung on a chain. And thine, that's an old-fashioned word. Thine, like, you could say, oh Lord, or thy Lord. But it also sounds like there's a football reference there. Offsides, and then the toss, like toss time almost. So definitely a football reference in there. But perp and the thurible, he ain't using it for incense. He's got that perp. Some of that Maui Wowie, that Bin Laden, right? Some of that good, that sounds like he's hitting the perp in the thurible. Nice.
With invertebrates, perp in a thurible. Both sides, toss dime merch in a urinal. Personal, dirtbag.
Offside. So toss dime, he plays it together with saying like he'll toss your merch in a urinal. It's nothing personal.
Don, don't provoke him to act up. I'm a urinal. It's nothing personal. Dirtbag Don, don't provoke him to act up.
Ooh, Dirtbag Don, right? Dirtbag Don, he's obviously referencing Don Corleone, but Dirtbag Don kind of means something different. He could also be talking about like Oscar the Grouch as well, right? Don't push his buttons.
It's nothing personal. Dirtbag Don, don't provoke him to act up. I'm golden doing donuts in the Totoro cat bus.
You know what? He said I'm golden too, kind of like I'm good. But it kind of made me think of golden showers because he's pissing. Right, he said he's tossed your merch in a urinal. Right, he's saying I'm golden. A golden shower is you're pissing on the merch. But doing donuts, obviously, but in a Totoro cat bus. I don't know if a lot of people would get that reference. The cat bus is it's like an animal bus. Picture like the Magic School Bus, but it's from my neighbor Totoro. All right, it's and so, but it kind of plays on something. Actually, it plays on something that's Japanese. It's the cat, the shape shifting cat, which would also play into ancient Rome and how they the mystical cat, the serval, right, and how they thought of cats. You know, cats were the only animal that can ever go inside the pyramids. So just I don't know if a lot of people are getting that. That's a Totoro cat bus. But it's basically a shape-shifting cat.
I'm golden doing donuts in the Totoro cat bus. Everything I touch turn a black sludge. Bugs
Ooh.
in the bag launch, punch through a Mack truck. Hunchback, get y'all acquainted with the contagion. Nobody safe, say hello to well beyond everything I touch turn a black sludge. Bugs in the bag launch, punch through a Mack truck.
So there's more dirt, right? He's talking about what did he say? He's already said dirt bag, right? And now he's talking about bugs in his food, right? Everything he touches turns to goo. He's talking about slimy, right? The worm from Oscar the Grouch. So he's using a lot of this references and he's tying it all back together. Punch through a Mack truck. Loosely, it could be a reach, but anytime he says punch or soup or stew or goulash, I'm thinking of tilting the ladle back as well, which would tie it in nicely.
Everything I touch turn a black sludge. Bugs in the bag launch, punch through a Mack truck. Hunchback, get y'all acquainted with the contagion. Nobody safe, say hello to well beyond containment. I came for every cell between the belfry and the basement. You maybe want to telephone your favorites. We take it.
So you said hunchback, right? Hunchback. Hold on.
With the contagion, nobody safe, say hello to well beyond containment. I came for every cell between the belt. Bugs in the bag launch, punch through a Mack truck. Hunchback, get y'all acquainted with the contagion. Nobody safe, say hello to well beyond containment. I came for every cell between the belfry and the basement. You maybe want to telephone your favorites.
So there's more imagery around dirt, right? And now he's like talking about sickness. And he's like spreading out like a disease, right? You could kind of plug this in with the earlier talk, but also the earlier talk about a disease and death and the sickness, right? When we think of the pirates, but we also talk about coughing and throwing up. So he's just really tying this all in there, like the coffin nails, right? Something that finally destroys you.
You maybe want to telephone your favorites. We take it where the warlocks lie.
You know what? I didn't even catch it there. There's some wordplay, and I love that. It's a sign of a great artist. It's not just the wordplay with the metaphors and the homonyms and all that, but think about what he said there, right? He said, nobody safe, say hello, right? There's wordplay on like using the phone. He said, get y'all acquainted. He said, say hello. Came for every cell, right? And so think about that wordplay there. Sick. He said, telephone your favorites, right?
Nobody safe, say hello to well beyond containment. I came for every cell between the belfry and the basement.
I came for every cell between the belfry and the basement. The belfry, it also ties with church and religion. That's the use of a steeple, right? This is the church. This is the steeple. Open the door, and here are the people. Face as. But you think about like a hunchback, right? Where he also referenced that a belfry is like a tower, and you could say a steeple for a church. But when someone was an outcast of society, like a servant, like Oscar the Grouch, like somebody poor, they would put them in these. If they had a disease during this period, they would put them in a tower. Think Rapunzel, but without the hot girl inside, right? You're just sitting there dying of your illness where people don't have to feel sorry for you. Excellent wordplay. And man, he's tying so much of this together with the earlier verses in the song. Sick.
Launch, punch through a Mack truck. Hunchback, get y'all acquainted with the contagion. Nobody safe, say hello to well beyond containment. I came for every cell between the belfry and the basement. You maybe want to telephone your favorites. We take the warlocks, lock horns, soda pop, popcorn, top notch gore, set tobacco, but foghorns, snotty nose, clogged pores, fork in his heart. Back away or catch a halo made of orbiting stars. Yeah.
Back away or catch a halo made of orbiting stars, right? That's what you get when you whoop somebody's butt in the cartoon. And they're sitting there like, and then the stars are going around their head, right? He said quite a bit there. We take it where the warlocks lock horns. So he's getting into conflict. Soda pop, popcorn, top notch, gore set to Bach over foghorns. Bach would be something that would be the opposite. That would be very relaxing. I don't know quite what he's saying there. Snotty nose, clogged pores, fork in his heart. Back away or catch a orbiting stars.
Popcorn, top-notch gore, set tobacco over foghorns, snotty nose clock.
Let me know, because that's the first, not the first, but I normally have a general sense of what he's saying. Top-notch gore, set tobacco over foghorns, snotty nose, clogged pores. Yeah, it's just, I got the last part. Let me know if you guys get what he's saying there.
Popcorn, top-notch gore, set tobacco over foghorns, snotty nose, clogged pores, fork in his heart. Back away or catch a halo made of orbiting stars. Yeah. Transform in the dark. Got a dog nose sniffing out the source of the snark. Got a cat's ears twitching.
Got a dog nose sniffing out the source of the snark. That's it's something that's difficult to track down, right?
Dark. Got a dog nose sniffing out the source of the snark. Got a cat's ears twitching every snap of a twig.
Okay, referencing cats again.
Orbiting stars, yeah. Transform in the dark. Got a dog nose sniffing out.
Now I wonder if it's him transforming, right? It sounds like he's the one transforming into this animal that has a dog nose, right, for sniffing out people that are difficult to track down. He said, got a cat's ears twitching, right? Every snap of a twig. Huh, who's there?
Stars, yeah. Transform in the dark. Got a dog nose sniffing out the source of the snark. Got a cat's ears twitching every snap of a twig. Triangulate your position, a simple rabbit to skin.
They said he'll geolocate your ass, right? Rabbits are easy to skin, but triangulate your position. It sounds like he's talking about like echolocation, like a bat.
Ears twitching every snap of a twig. Triangulate your position, a simple rabbit to skin. I've been an echo in the dark who demo applied science.
Yeah, I've been an echo in the dark, right? That's how bats are able to tell where you are and where they're going through echolocation, even through the dark.
The parlay, barf skin. I've been an echo in the dark who demo applied science at the parlay.
Gotta move my applied science. Applied science, I think of the scientific method, right? I don't know if he's referring to it that way. Let me know if who demo applied science. I've been an echo in the dark who demo applied science. Let me know if you guys know how that possibly breaks down. I get the echolocation part, but who demo applied science. I'm not sure quite what he means with that.
Barf rainbows and cried echo in the dark who demo applied science at the parlay. Barf rainbows and cried diamonds, okay.
There's a pirate reference there, right? A parlay is like a discussion, a conference. It means to speak.
Science at the parlay. Barf rainbows and cried diamonds, okay.
Barf rainbows and cried diamonds. You know, I'm thinking rap, barfing rainbows. You know, crying diamonds because you're rich, but complaining or whining. But that seems loose. Let me know what you guys think. The second part here, it looks like he's about to wrap it up. It's getting much more difficult to translate. I've been in an echo in the dark who demo applied science at the parlay, barf rainbows and cried diamonds. So he's at this meeting. Is he barfing rainbows? Is he spitting lyrics? Cry diamonds because he's rich? It doesn't sound like it would fit in the same.
Ready, headlong in a creeping death. Respawn where you least expect. Remo applied science at the parlay. Barf rainbows and cry diamonds, okay. Ready, headlong in a creeping death.
Ready, Freddy. I would think of Freddy Krueger, right? Friday the 13th. Or Nightmare on Elm Street, I believe, right? 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your doors. 5, right? It could be that, or he could be talking about I don't think he would be referring to Freddy Fazbear. That's the Five Nights at Freddy's. Let's let it ride a bit. Let's see if there's any other context there.
Rainbows and cried diamonds, okay. Ready, headlong in a creeping death. Respawn where you least expect.
See, that leads me to believe he's talking about something completely different. like I get he could be talking about Respawn like you would in a video game, but who remembers what is it called? Spawn, right? Spawn. It was the animated series Spawn and Violator. I don't think this song would go that deep, but man, I've broken down some of Aesop's other work, and sometimes I'm like, no, he can't possibly be referencing that. I'm reaching. And then it's like I hear something else where he's referencing it. And I'm like, maybe he did know about that. This would be, I don't know if a lot of people would get the reference to Spawn. But it does tie in. There's a guy named Freddy that's a character in that as well. Freddy is basically like a cokehead. But he is a homeless dude, and he lived in the alleys of New York, which would really tie in with the Grouch. It would tie in with being in New York and the Yankee caps, the cokehead, kind of the. These are the people we've already talked about smoking weed, and we've talked about poppy, right, and poppy seeds. So it would tie in, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, or if any of you guys know the animated series or the comic book Spawn that has to do with the Violator.
Ready headlong in a creeping death. Respawn where you least expect. I can pick a pen and tumbler right in front of the guard. Out the front with another Picasso under his arm. City limit.
He said, earlier he said what? I was curled up under the threads of purple and reds and purple, right? It sounds like he's starting to tie this all back in together because he's saying I could pick a pin and tumbler right in front of the guard, right? It's kind of like he's on the run from the guards and the powers that be, but he's also bragging about his ability to steal. But it's a picking a lock reference, but it ties in earlier with the earlier verse.
Front of the guard, out the front with another Picasso under his arm. Hit the city limits, still exhibiting his inner Caulfield, baby.
Ooh, he's talking about Holden Caulfield, right? That's Catcher in the Rye. He's the outlaw, the rebel character, and actually, he's done other work. I think he's a fictional character, but in Catcher in the Rye, he's talking about a time when he was on vacation in New York City, and that's where the Catcher in the Rye takes place. I believe so. It's been such a long time. I read the book, and this was many moons ago. But I know definitely Holden Caulfield, that's who he's referring to. He's like the storyteller, if you would, or the narrator, if you would, in Catcher in the Rye.
Hit the city limits, still exhibiting his inner Caulfield, baby. I make you double hockey sticks on wheels.
Ooh. The double hockey sticks on wheels, that's a way for saying hell on wheels. But it's like when you don't want to cuss, that's what you do in hockey, right? You hit the double hockey sticks.
Caulfield, baby. I make you double hockey sticks on wheels. New dawn, show 'em how the voodoo doll feels.
Ooh.
Plus launch fireball.
That's referring to like an effigy doll, right? An effigy doll is like a representation of it could be a specific person, and that you're doing some voodoo or some, you're wishing the worst on someone, but you're using pins to affect what you believe to be how they it translates to real life.
On wheels, new dawn, show 'em how the voodoo doll feels. Plus launch fireballs from the palm heels.
Hadouken!
On an otherwise slow day, this is how I row into the rogue wave, yo.
Ugh. Yo, that's gotta be.
This video is sponsored.
We've done a few Aesop Rock videos, and I don't know that I've ever been completely stumped. I might have went a different direction and been incorrect, but this might be the first time that he's just stumped me where I don't know where he's going with something. But it only happened twice in this on this track. But man, it just something as we start going into his catalog, man, this guy has got just a phenomenal, not just vocabulary, but his view of the world. Just like, I think I would, if I had to choose 3 or 4 people that, choose any 3 people in history and have lunch with, I would just really want to see where his head is. And his view of the world just seems so different. Interesting, but he's definitely an intellectual. If you guys are fans of Aesop Rock, I know a lot of you are, and thank you for supporting the channel. Man, show some love, like the video, share the video on Reddit or within your your own communities, and definitely trying to grow the channel so we can continue doing this. And send me your recommendations. Somebody actually just sent this to me earlier today, like, yo, you got to check out Rogue Wave. It's like, yo, let's get it, right? So it looks like it was just the song itself was only a few minutes, and we're already an hour into this video. So really excited to get into some more of his work. And there's a catalog, there's a folder below if you go down into the breakdowns, full of Aesop rock, everything from Garbology, and again, Pizza Alley, Mystery Fish, Kirby, and a few random ones that people have suggested that we just keep adding to that folder. Show your love, and we'll see you on the next video.